Welcome to the Architect of Resilience podcast, where we explore the secrets of overcoming life's challenges and unlocking unstoppable strength through deep personal conversations and expert insights.
The pit, that's what I call it. And I'm not here to tell you like I've been through worse than anyone else or anything like that. We all deal with our own challenges, our own obstacles and strife in life. And it's a matter of recognizing where we're at within certain moments and how we manage through those moments can drastically change. And so the pit, this is something that it's an experience where you've kind of taken this free fall from whatever, heights you were at, and you're in a moment of struggle, strife. You can't see the end in sight. You can't see your way out of it. In fact, you're constantly seeing all the ways that you're just going to fail and implode, and things can fall around you. And so it's really important that we learn the skills of how to navigate those moments appropriately, how to shorten the amount of time that we're in the pit, how we decrease the depth that we fall within it. And it's important to develop those skills. And so we're going to talk about that framework. And so this is something that's an output of like a lot of my passion with my history before I had a lot of success as an early child, dealing with a lot of strife, struggle, trauma, overcoming that to become what I am today, an expert in human resilience, engineer, author as it relates to all that sort of stuff. So that framework is part of, an intrapersonal model. And so the Enddelss Evolution framework is built around these three factors: the intrapersonal, internally, interpersonal, how we interact with others, and extrapersonal, the tactical strategies that we use and employ in the world. And so every discussion is going to have components of that. So be on the lookout for that and try to look at that. And so the pit within the intrapersonal is part of the 6 P's methodology, the development cycle as a human being, whether it's physical, mental, however, fits within this model. And so understanding where you're at and how to work through that and how to grow from that experience, because that is also the part of that framework, is using every aspect as a growth model, right? Now, if it's a trauma experience, there's only so much that you can come out of it. It's still going to pull you down to some level. And I'm going to start my first story with kind of one of those experiences. And this is when I was a young child and I didn't have these skills. So please understand that. But as I'm telling this story, I think you'll see some features in that you may see in adults at times when they don't have those skills or don't employ them or don't have the strength to put them in place. So I was in second grade. We were living in a condemned home, and this is when we were way out in Northern California, small, tiny community, hours from anything. And this home, we didn't have running water or electricity. Well, this sounds like a lot of my stories, right? And no insulation, no doors, windows. And so I had a best friend at school. And I started staying the night at his place. And then I wanted to stay the night at his place every night because it was a nice home. It wasn't at home where we had to, hike with some gallon jugs of water down the road to find the natural spring and fill up. And, just the environment we lived in was very different. And so after a week, I stayed at his home a week straight. And then my mom's like, you can't go there tonight. You live with us. So you can't just go start living with someone else. And so I threw a fit. I wasn't known for throwing fits at all. It was very unusual, but I threw a fit. And then the next day I get to school and I find out that the house had caught on fire and this family of 7 had all tragically died. And it was a horrible experience for me. I didn't obviously know how to deal with that. And that's not the end of this story either. And there was a lot of even internal blame for myself because I thought somehow I had caused that because of, throwing the fit, so on. And my friend was gone, his family that I was staying with. And I didn't speak. I didn't speak for months on end. My mom says a year, but I know within that year is, when she was taken off to jail and I was taken off along with my siblings, into custody because we ended up that summer moving further, away from this small town up into the mountains. And so we were like 30 miles from this place called Murder Mountain. And that's what my parents were doing. If you've ever seen that documentary, they're trying to grow weed for a living. And it's my responsibility to take care of my 3 younger sisters and my brother all day long while they tended the crops. And so I had a lot of things on my plate very early. And we're sitting there on the lookout, and we were positioned, our campground up in the mountains where we found an old road that came to an end, had set up strategically so we could see the long road winding through the mountains, and we could see the stream of police officers coming up. And as such, my parents said, "Hey, got to take care of the kids. We got to run." So they took off into the mountains while I was sitting there, and the police show up, and they take all of us into their cars. They're loading us up, and my sisters are bawling. My brother's bawling. They weren't too different. My sisters were in the back seat of the same vehicle I was. My brother was in another one for some reason, I'm not sure. And I was in the front seat. And I'm talking to the police officer, looking at all the fancy stuff in the vehicle I'd never seen in my life, asking questions. And I started disassociating. Because again, I didn't have these skills that we're going to talk about, right? So I'm sitting there asking myself, like, looking at myself going, what is wrong with you? Why do you have no emotion? My sisters are bawling, and I'm just like this second person look. And so, yeah, I'm telling this overreaching story, and I'll tell some more stories that we could probably, people may be able to comprehend a little bit better personally. But this is an example of not having those tools, right? And obviously I didn't have them for a reason, but we're going to talk about this is how important they are in this framework, understanding where you're at and what to employ, because it's a very different look than the plunge, which we went through in the last piece. And so the proven methodology here, and there's some neuroscience behind this. You can actually see this validated now. This has been the framework I've used for a long time. My verbiage is probably a little different than maybe what you might look up, but it's easy to remember. It's ACL. So yeah, having to have an ACL surgery, probably not a good thing. Maybe that's sticky. Acknowledge is the first step. Once we acknowledge where we're at, like I am in it. I am in a fucking moment that is a major moment in my life. My life isn't like this. This moment is like this. It's going to be like this for a bit, and I just got to put my head down and deal with it. Now, remember those words, put my head down. So I'm going to have to put my head down and deal with this. And there is going to be an end, but just acknowledging like, oh wait, this isn't life. This is right now. That's a big, powerful piece to understand where am I at, recognizing and separating that out. Okay. And the second step from that, and this will sound weird at first, but is to celebrate. Celebrate the moment. And we'll talk more about that as I move forward. And the last one is leverage. So we're going to cover those in more depth so it makes sense in a little bit. But first, I'm going to tell a different story. It's a more recent experience. And yeah, I will get to, I think the last episode I talked about like my current, where I've been working through with Kabuki Strength and now Kabuki Power over the last 6 months. And I'll tie into that story as well. So you've got an update of kind of like the next step of this current process for me, right? But this was a couple years ago, and it's a literal pit. This pit right here. So the ground used to be at the top. You can't see, this is a 12-foot tall ceiling above where I'm sitting. And so I started building this shop, which actually digs under my house. 50 dump trucks of material were getting removed. And at that time, it was another time that there were some struggles with cash flow in the business. And that year, the week I broke ground, I had to lay myself off. So I had no cash flow, and we had this giant hole in the ground. And I'm just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? Do I stop the project? Well, if I can't complete it, my house, like what happens? Oh my God, the house, I can't like sell it because it's completely destroyed actually. Like it's framed up with holes in it and a hole underneath it. My homeowners association's going to sue me. Like there's just like, it was just I got to move through this, and it kept getting worse. And so I wasn't getting paid. So I had to finish this massive project by the end of the year. And as it gets closer, it just gets bigger and bigger, because if I don't finish, I'm also not making money this year. So if I don't finish by the end of the year, I can't refinance the property, and because I've got no income, so I have to finish by the end of the year. And we're just like on this, I could tell a million stories around this, but we get to the very end. I'll shorten this up. But the last couple of weeks there, have to finish it and get COVID, right? Still got the kitchen to redo. Floors are torn up. And me and my wife and my daughter are like stuffed in our tiny little room because we had a few workers here, but they weren't able to finish this project. Then we lost our refrigerator, so it went out. So we didn't have any food because we're stuck in our room. And then the mice got into our pantry because the holes in the house. They ate all the pantry. So we're like, and then at night I would have to come downstairs to try to, while I've got COVID with my lungs closing up, finish out all the flooring and get things done. So anyway, got it done with 45 minutes left in the year. And and everything ended up working out. But those are the moments of like, how do you just like not lock up, and how do you move through that and use that? And so talk about acknowledging, celebrate, and leverage. How do you celebrate that? Well, celebrating that is recognizing it is an opportunity for you. There's nothing that can change where you're at, but this is going to be a moment in your life. I told you that story with pride, because you've got to sit there and go, I'm going to be so proud of myself when I get to the other side of this. I'm going to know what I'm capable of. I'm going to, like, being able to know that this is, like, when I get to late stage in my life and I can reflect back on the things that I took on and challenged and overcame, like, so much of the rudimentary, easy, day-to-day life that you live just passes along. But it's moments like this that you end up looking back on. Go read any business story. Me and my wife love reading business books. And every single one talks about those early years, the challenges, the struggles. Like, those are the glory days. The nostalgia. The ones that they tell new people coming in when the company's actually, like, stabilized and doing great. Like, you missed those days. Those were the amazing days. And that's life. The action book version of your life is based on these moments. And they're also the moments because, and we're going to talk about this, how you use those to get better and stronger. And so the last piece of this is the leverage. Because it is going to bring the best in you. Like, it means that you care because you're in the pit mentally. Like, you could just not care, but the fact that you care means that the outcome is important to you. And you have heightened response to this, and you're going to deliver your best. It is why people have stage fright when it comes to public speaking and things like that, because it's important. You don't want to just get up there, I don't care, and look like, though that is the natural response to which they're going to bring that about. So how can we use this to be even better if within this ACL framework? And I use the words a lot of times, the shortest path is the longest road. It's a matter of, it's your opportunity to find the rocks, the things that you're going to stumble over, your weaknesses, your fears, to dive into, like, all the things that you want to find out in life as early as possible to continue to build and become stronger, right? So I said, put your head down, right? We could be like Icarus and look to the sun and just like, boom, right? And his wing, the wings melted, fall to the ground. Like this, having your head down, when you're in the pit and you think about what it's going to be, how much work's got to get done to get out of here. When you look up, it is so hard to have the motivation to take one step when you can see it's 50,000 steps. But what you need to do is look down and just like, what am I doing? I'm taking one step forward. That's my action that I'm taking. That step, so in this sense, is the action that I'm taking in my life aligned with my values? And if so, it's a step and it's moving in the right direction. That's all you've got to do. You don't have to look up to see where you're going, just to know, is what I'm doing right now aligned with who I am and where I want to move? Okay. And in so doing, taking a step forward, you're going to find the things that you trip and fall over. Another analogy that I use with this is, imagine you're rowing a boat. Okay. As you're rowing this boat, we need to make sure that we're going a direction. That direction is your values. Am I going in the right direction? We need to power that boat. That's our strengths that we develop. And that's a lot of other pieces that we look at in the Enddelss Evolution model. When we're in the interpersonal, extrapersonal is a lot of skill development categories. But we also have to be, again, like in my walking analogy, looking down, looking in the waters to see whether we're getting caught on some seaweed or going to hit a rock. What are we going to see? We need to look at that. That is our weaknesses.
Let's dive into the world of optimizing your overall health. With pushing my physical limits, I encountered significant reductions in my health, and I reached out to Merrick Health as the premier telehealth service. I loved their personalized health coaching from the comfort of my home. They empower you with the choice of self-service diagnostic labs, or what I chose, the guided optimization with expert interpretations of blood work, health coaching, and with medications delivered to my door. Merrick Health is your partner in optimizing your health. Listeners can seize a fantastic 10% discount off their first blood work with code RESILIENCE at merrickhealth.com. That's code RESILIENCE for 10% off.
Or our fears. And your weaknesses, again, that could be extrapersonal, interpersonal communication skills. It could be interpersonal, but mostly that's going to be your fears. So again, all of these components, every step, you're looking at both interpersonal and extrapersonal. In every one of those, when you see those, when you uncover that rock, kick that rock, it's not the rock. What are the shadows behind that rock? What scares you? What is the thing while you're in this moment of the pit that keeps bringing more fears and holds you back so you can't celebrate it? And every one of those is a microcycle of that plunge experience. It is an opportunity for you to look into that fear, meditate into it, just like we discussed in that last piece, and understand the deeper piece about you. Okay. So last week I talked about, my values, bring those down into guide, passion, create, but also what are my weaknesses, my fears? What are my fears? And, this fear of failure or perception, being perceived as a failure is just has been a massive driver for me. And those things are going to hold you back from being able to do as much as you want. Because it's not about just like navigating that pit. You want to propel yourself. You want to propel yourself beyond it, because the next step is to get to a higher plateau than where you started the first time. All right. And so for me, like in this moment, I talked about the plunge experience, November, December, like what's going to happen. But it's a matter for me, like I have to, like the thing that's going to hold me back is fearing that people will perceive that I fail in any fashion. And so meditating into that and going, what would it look like if I did that? So imagine that worst case scenario. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to look away from it. Don't, again, that no fear mentality. We all have fear, right? Look right into it and imagine that that does happen. And a lot of times you'll find once you walk through that process, it's not that bad. Like if that happened, what would I do? What would be the steps? I'm there right now. And we find that our fear of that thing happening is not as much of actually being in that experience of having that thing happening and planning from there. And you can realize, so in my moment, like, okay, what if I walk away from all of this and start something new aligned again with this? And I realize now you get to look back, and here's the practice. Here's the thing to do when you're in the pit now, right? Once you've acknowledged that, take those worst case scenarios, look them dead in the eye and go, that's a reality. I lose everything. Okay, but actually I have all this thing, I have value. I have myself. I have my skills. I have whatever, like what, now take a step back. Okay, I haven't lost everything I'm at right now, and I have all these things at my disposal. What can I use from there to now move forward with that plan that would be the next step? And you will realize how much more opportunity is sitting in front of you. So that's a great practice to do, and I encourage everyone to take that practice. I want to hear your story of what that would be. Tell me this worst case scenario and now walk through what would I do if that did happen. Got the Enddelss Evolution community. You can go to my website, check it out. It's completely free. Join. I want to hear your story. I'll engage. Let's talk about it. And I have not found anyone that when they're in a moment like this that hasn't been able to leverage to something better with walking through that exercise. So you can't do that exercise until you acknowledge. Now, doing that exercise and realizing the power of where you're at as well now can help you take that celebration to another. Holy shit, right? But now I'm celebrating. I'm in this opportunity. This is going to be a moment that I'm going to look to for the rest of my life. It's going to be a story I tell my grandkids. It's going to be, something that I reflect on my deathbed. Like it's an opportunity to become stronger and better and have a life that fucking means something. That's something to celebrate. And now look at how can I leverage that to another level? And so that's the practice of how are we going to use this to leverage? One, it's automatically going to do that because you care about it. But use this practice. And then now once you've done that, it's time to don't look at all the million things you got to do. Take a look down or turn those oars. Do the work one step, one row at a time, just making sure it's aligned with who you are and your values. That's it. I hope to do some more actually on the shortest path, longest road component. If there's any other pieces you'd like me to dive into, particular to this, a lot of this are elaborated in additional lessons that I'll go through in some additional podcasts. So please tell me what you'd like to hear extrapolated on more in the course of this. And please do that exercise. Get on the Enddelss Evolution. Tell me what you come up with.